I want to ask you about um, who the establishment is in your mind. Who is the establishment and who is not the establishment?
Great question. So, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Gavin Newsom, all the corporate Democrats who take corporate PAC money, serve their corporate donors 100%, lie to us 24/7, never intend to do any progressive policy positions, never intend to do any Democratic policy positions that they state in campaigns, and are backed by the liars in mainstream media, pretending that they're on our side when they're playing good cop, bad cop with establishment Republicans and robbing us blind on behalf of their donors.
Do you think that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are establishment?
So they're complicated. The reason they're complicated is because they act like the establishment. They do the same robberies, the same corporate tax cuts, but they are pretending to be populists. And that's why I've called Donald Trump a fake populist hundreds of times, right? And I've called him a fake populist on right-wing shows. And I've said, hey, watch out for your own donors on right-wing shows, right? And so, but they're not part of this the machine that was the Borg. Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden were the co-captains of the Borg, and that machine was unstoppable, and that machine was maintains corporate rule, and that's my mortal enemy. That Borg is the one we should all be fighting against.
So do you think it's less bad that one person donates $277 million to a candidate versus 5 people donating $277 million to a candidate? Elon Musk gave $277 million to Donald Trump and is now, again, worth $400 billion. Is that somehow less establishment in your mind?
So there's 2 parts of it, Franny. One is they at least talk the populist game, and the advantage of that is that also spread through the right-wing base. That, hey, them faking populism, remember, the people that are hearing that message don't realize it's fake, right? Mm-hmm. So they're talking anti-war, they're talking anti-corporate. You see Tucker Carlson talking anti-corporate. You see Steve Bannon saying we should increase corporate taxes. That doesn't mean Steve Bannon is an angel, but what it does mean, or anywhere near it, but what it does mean is that idea of populism and anti-establishment, et cetera, is spreading throughout the right wing. That is an amazing opportunity for us to actually coalesce on economic populism that they now believe in, even if their leader doesn't, right? So that's point 1, and it's super important. Point 2 is, in some ways, that individual corruption is worse, and in some ways it's better. So how is it worse? So Miriam Adelson gives, $137 million to Trump, and Sheldon Adelson had given him $200 million in previous campaigns. So he delivers foreign policy to the Adelson family, right?
Right.
Moved our embassy in his first term. Now he's thinking about allowing the annexation of northern Gaza and the West Bank. And you saw me fight tooth and nail against Trump, because that's what I was really, really worried about, that he's going to go and be extreme and radical to serve his top donors. On Elon, he handed all of domestic policy to him. So that's how it's worse. How in the world could it be at the same time a little bit better? Well, the way that it's better is that it's not a machine, it's chaotic. So it's one guy here and another person there, but the other person disagrees with Miriam, and then Trump doesn't quite know what to do, and he listens to the last person in the room, but he also kind of listens to his base. We've got chaos there, and chaos is way better than a machine. A machine is ruthless and just steamrolls you.
So I think that's
worse than the McConnell-Biden era. Nothing worse.
Okay, I do want to talk about the McConnell-Biden era and establishment a little bit more, but just on that, I feel like my very first question to you is, well, what are you doing? I feel like that's the most cogent answer I've gotten from you that I could sort of get on board with, which is exploit the chaos to turn MAGA against Trump. But even if you wanted to do that, I'm not sure you're achieving it through the kinds of interviews that you're doing and the way that you're playing to the right, especially when you go on those stages and hit the left more than you do the right. But I just want to leave that there. I accept the hey, let's plant the booby traps so that we can make them fall into them later, that kind of thing. That makes the most sense to me, even if I sort of strategically disagree with it. I want to talk about the establishment, though, and Mitch McConnell. So, for example, Mitch McConnell, who I am no fan of, obviously, believes that there should not be recess appointments for the Trump administration. Would you say that that is establishment, ergo you are anti that and anti-establishment?
Mitch McConnell is against recess appointments.
Yes.
So that one's a super tough one because sometimes the establishment will block something. Like if Bernie was president and he wanted to put in Stephanie Kelton as Treasury Secretary, I actually would disagree with that. But I put that as an example. The establishment would say no way, and they would block it with everything that they have. There is a scenario where I would say, Bernie, do a recess appointment, right? And so, on the other hand, if Bernie came in and said, I don't care about advice and consent of the Senate, I'm just going to do everyone as a recess appointment, I would say, no, don't do that. Don't do that. That's not a good idea.
Why?
So
because it's anti-democratic. Was that?
Yeah, the core.
Sure.
So, Franny, the core of the question is, when we talk about the system, what do we mean by the system? Because there's two different systems that people refer to, and then they conflate them. The system we want to protect is democracy, the Constitution, civil rights, etc. That's the system that we love and believe in. The system we do not want to protect and we want to fight against is donor money, establishment, protecting the status quo, protecting corporate rule. So separate those two things out, because one, the permanent system of the Constitution and democracy is great. The current system of corruption and establishment rule is horrible.
Yeah. Do you understand that the right actually just conflates those two things?
I think the left often conflates those two things too.
Well, okay, so you would be in favor of Donald Trump doing recess appointments, or you wouldn't in this case?
So if he's doing blanket recess appointments, I'm against it. I always think shoe on the other foot. That's why I brought up Bernie Sanders. In order to be fair, hey, how would I feel if it was the other way around? If he does one or two, I understand it as a matter of philosophy.
Okay.
But if he does a recess appointment, I'm very likely to be against that particular person, like a Kash Patel or Pete Hegseth. He's going to do recess appointments on the most radical culture warrior stuff that I hate. I hate when the right does culture war stuff. I don't love it when the left does it, but I certainly hate it when the right does it. And so I'm worried about his recess appointments because of the people, the specific people that he's likely to do them with.
One of those things also in terms of this establishment and anti-establishment sort of framework that you're using is also Project 2025 and Russell Vought, who he just appointed to be the head of the Office of Management and Budget. Russell Vought would like to fire federal workers, replace them with loyalists. He also wants to use the military to target political dissidents. This is all obviously in Project 2025 that he helped to author. Is that establishment or anti-establishment? There's nothing more anti-establishment than firing a bunch of federal workers. Do you believe that that's a populist thing to do?
No, it's fake populism. And so it's so alluring to the MAGA base because they feel like, oh, we're fighting against the government, right? But what I'm trying to get them to understand is, like, you guys, they think that the government is a blanket bad thing. And so the story I often tell on these shows is the one that Matt Stoller does. Great progressive, done great anti-monopoly work in the Senate, et cetera, which is, hey, what size pipe should I get? And people always ask, and that's why Matt does it this way. Well, what job are you doing? It depends. And that's exactly the point that I make to these right wingers. Do we want big government or little government? Well, it depends, right? Are we invading Iraq? Then I want smaller government, right? Are we going to invade doctors' offices and get between a woman and a doctor? Then I want smaller government, right? But if we're going to protect the average American from the bankers, then I want a little bit larger government. I don't want to defund the police on Wall Street, right? So I explain that, hey, if you fire people that are at the IRS, guess who's it's going to help the most? The very rich who cheat on their taxes.
But they all want to audit the Pentagon, which the IRS doesn't do. But it's very interesting that, you got everyone to cheer auditing the Pentagon. But of course, the idea of auditing billionaires, the Republicans are absolutely against that because they've been trying to defund the IRS. Exactly.
Right. And remember, again, there's different layers of right wing now. There's their leaders who are almost, uniformly full of crap. Then there's, a middle bureaucracy, and then there's the voters. And the voters, and Franny, you don't have to trust me on this because those MAGA guys, they will tell you exactly what they think. They're not holding anything back. They have no need to lie to
Yeah, they've
you.
been telling us for many, many years.
Yeah. So they're also not lying when they say they're anti-war, anti-corruption. They might have been misdirected, but they're not lying. So what I'm trying to get them to see is firing the federal workers is not the answer.
Yeah.
Cutting the Pentagon is part of the answer.
Yeah.
And so when they say yes to cutting the Pentagon, they're not lying. The MAGA voters actually want to cut the Pentagon.
What do you think?
Do it is a completely different question. And so one more thing that's super important, though, it's not a booby trap, Franny. I understand what you're saying, and that's one way to frame it. But in my mind, when you have people who actually agree, you're not tricking them. You're just getting them to see, guys, you wanted to cut the Pentagon, but look, your leaders didn't cut the Pentagon. So do you see how they led you astray? Right? I'm actually getting them to I'm just showing them that their leaders are not doing the things that they promised. On the other hand, sometimes Trump responds to his base. So if that base gets angry enough and says, hey, let's cut the Pentagon, maybe Trump does cut the Pentagon, where Biden never would, McConnell never would. In the Biden-McConnell era, the Pentagon's only going to get increased forever and ever and ever. Corruption is always going to increase forever and ever and ever.
I mean, wait, just on this.
Advantage for us is that he likes to be popular. He just doesn't know how.
Sure. So I just really want to, just drill down on a couple of those things. And then there's a lot to talk about, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but just on this new MAGA, old MAGA thing. I've heard you say new MAGA as you talk about anti-corruption, anti-war. Cenk, they were like that in 2016, man. I mean, let's be honest. The reason Donald Trump just destroyed the Republican primary was absolutely being an outsider, right? And sort of purported, seemingly anti-establishment, even though, he's a billionaire, part of the elite. But it really was around being against the Iraq war. Now, for his reasoning was, we should have taken all the oil, F those, whatever, like enter expletive, right? Which I think gets to another point. But he was also, remember, in terms of the corruption stuff, they wanted to get rid of, what was it? They wanted term limits. They had term limits and were suggesting them early on. So the actual the outgrowth of an entire country tired of 8 years of Bush and endless war, and also that was, suffering from the 2008 financial collapse and didn't have any faith in the banks and these financial institutions and all the politicians that protect them that was already in the ether, right? And you had a Bernie Sanders and you had Donald Trump. And of course, the actual establishment, that the centrists that I hate as well, were trying to say Bernie is exactly like Donald Trump. Look at him. He's using the same. No. They were very different. And that's why I wanted to talk to you about the differences between right-wing populism and left-wing populism. I think there is a difference, and there's a very important difference. That difference is historical as well. Right-wing populism often feeds off of nativism, off of othering immigrants, religious minorities, blaming those people, and then we can have the socialism, right? That's why obviously in Hitler's Third Reich, you've got a National Socialist Party, right? This is Germany for the Germans. And there are people who are in Germany are the Germans and people who are not the Germans. That also in this country, although you scoff when I talk about Chinese Americans, there was the Chinese Exclusion Act, specifically dividing working class people in this country based on race, saying the Chinese are the reason you don't have anything. They're the ones taking all of our jobs, even though we know that the rich robber barons were absolutely taking advantage of them, just like we know that all the Trump donors who paid for their positions in this administration are also taking advantage of undocumented labor. So do you see a difference between right-wing populism and left-wing populism? And are you not barking up not just the wrong tree, but a very, very dangerous one?
Yeah. So, no, I think there's a massive difference. And so first, let me just really quickly address what you said about the Chinese. So the Chinese were the only nationality ever banned from America. Trump considered a Muslim ban, but didn't actually execute one. Chinese were actually banned from America for a long time. So I know all about racism against Chinese. And obviously that also sprung up during COVID, et cetera. But I just in that heated moment there, I was saying that the Chinese, maybe third or fourth in line these days. Muslims and
not
trans
from what
people
they're
are
talking about. I mean, I'm just looking at what they're saying, which is like this would be the easiest group to like sweep up. Like I'm just saying, not like Chinese
It's
immigrants
not,
who've
we
been
don't
here
have
for
to compete over it.
decades. No,
Yeah,
I understand.
and my
That's
kids
why
are
I
Chinese.
said that. I didn't just pick it because I'm Chinese. I literally just looked to what they're talking about. But
No, I know.
anyway,
Look,
but so
my
you
kids are
do
Chinese,
agree.
so
You
I'm not.
sure.
I'm
You
worried about it.
agree though. You agree that there is a difference between left-wing populism and right-wing populism.
Yeah. So now let's get to the core of it. So there's left wing and right wing populists on social issues disagree more than we disagree with the establishment. The establishment is generally like, we don't really care if you're Chinese, Muslim, whatever. The only color we care about is green. As long as we let us rob you from here to eternity, I'm good with it. We'll allow Peruvians to rob you, Jews, Muslims, Christians, everybody can rob you, right? And so,
and the establishment is again just Biden, Kamala Harris,
McConnell, everyone who takes corporate
McConnell,
donations and serves
okay.
corporate donors. Okay,
but not
so
Donald Trump because he doesn't take corporate, except for all the corporate money he's taking. But he's different. Okay, keep going. Okay,
Wait,
I'm just trying to understand who the establishment is
Trump
and
takes
isn't.
corporate PAC money. I mean, how many times can I call him a fake populist before you believe me? Okay, so the establishment is better on social and cultural issues than the populist right is. So that's why, like, this is not, you can't make blanket things like, in my opinion, never talk to them. They're all racist, etc.
I never said that. I never said not to talk to them. I never said that.
Hold on. Or they're all lovely and they've all turned and they're all amazing and are going to agree with us. No, of course not, right? So, but on economic issues, we agree a lot more, way more. And that's super important. And so, and you know what it is, Franny? They're using the culture wars, in my opinion, to create a wedge between us. That's why they're called wedge issues, to get us to hate one another instead of realizing that the problem isn't to our left or right. It's up, look up. The problem is up, sure. Right? And so but right-wing populists on that nativist strand that they have, which is real, yes, it's scary and it's super wrong-headed. And it does put us in the line of fire. So when Steve Bannon, he says both of those things. He says tax the rich, increase tax on corporations. And then he says my favorite book is Camp of the Saints, where the hero murders all the immigrants that are coming into France, right? Yeah. So virulently anti-immigrant, right? And so I don't want to empower the Steve Bannons of the world and the Ann Coulters of the world to do their crazy stuff, right? That is anti-immigrant, anti-my family, anti-me, anti all the people we care about, the American people, the left, everyone, right? But we get to fight them on that, Franny. We don't have to say like blanket Steve Bannon is great, Charlie Kirk's great. No, and I've been so clear about this.
So you think you've been fighting? You think you've been fighting them?
Oh, on the issues we disagree on, hell yeah. And so I got into a fight in trigonometry over in that show over trans girls in high school sports. And they're outraged by it. And they're like, oh, what if your daughter comes in second place in cross country? I'm like, who gives a crap, right? What are you guys are going to check the genitalia of millions of kids because you're on this like transphobic like mania, right? Just settle down. These are culture wars. They're dividing us. Stop letting them divide us.
I think one thing that's really hard, and this is just in general, like we can talk about trans issues. I actually want to play a clip from your Turning Points conference, but I do just think that one of the biggest issues for me that is not, it's not hypothetical. It's very real, which is the right to an abortion. And that is one thing that I think a lot of the so-called right-wing populists don't really give a shit about, especially not the mouthpieces of Donald Trump. They don't care that women are bleeding out from miscarriages and dying, going into septic shock. They don't care that they're being turned away from hospitals, that, yeah, their life or death is dependent on a bureaucracy right now. That seems like a difficult thing to find a so-called middle ground on. And I feel like we're just sort of ending up with this hypothetical discussion rather than talking about the actual people who are dying literally right now as I speak.
So, Franny, number one, you can't find a middle ground on everything. My idea isn't that we're magically going to kumbaya on every issue. That's crazy, right?
Okay.
So that's why I keep saying thousands of times, when we disagree, we fight. And the good news is,
but I don't want to get a beer with someone who thinks that I should, go into septic shock instead of be attended by a physician.
Yeah. So I know that this is the thought that's breaking a lot of people's minds, but you should. So please let me explain why. Okay. So it's so easy for both sides to say, no, that their way of thinking is so antithetical to what we think, so wrong, that I will never have a beer with them. I will never talk to them. And every time I see them, I'm going to say racist or sexist or some sort of charge to show my moral superiority. But hold on. Remember, they think their radical right is saying the same exact thing to them, to Patrick Bet-David, to Charlie Kirk, to everyone who hosts me. They're like, Cenk called us fascist. Cenk believes trans girls should be allowed to compete in high school sports. And Cenk is a radical on this, and Cenk is a radical, and he thinks he's a Muslim, and he's this, and he's that, etc. So they say, don't have a beer with him. Don't talk to him, right? So, but that's exactly how we get siloed. And instead of having conversations and realizing, yes, we massively disagree on 60, maybe 80% of issues, but for Christ's sake, on some of the most important issues, that 20 to 40% where we agree on economic populism, we never get to an agreement, and then the establishment laughs their ass off at us.
Sure, but Cenk, because
we got them to hate each other.
If your 5% of disagreement with me is I don't believe you should have equal rights under medical law, fuck you. You know what I'm saying? Like wait, hang on. It's not fuck you. It's I'll see you when I beat you. Do you know what I'm saying? And this is to me what left-wing populism is about. This is what Bernie was so good at doing. He would never throw anyone under the bus. He would always remember black, white, gay, straight, Muslim, Jewish. Like he kept on going, and he'd be like, when's he going to finish this laundry list of people he wants to bring on board to the political revolution? And it was brilliant, and he never forgot to do it. And he never caped to the right or the right-wing framing. He said, yes, he might work with Trump on some labor stuff. Did Trump want to do that shit? Of course he didn't, right? Did Trump vetoed a bill that he finally got passed to not sell Saudi Arabia weapons when he finally reached across the aisle? Everything you're talking about, it's all fine, but we're like little insects bumping up in a fucking diorama because at the top is goddamn Trump. And if you don't kiss that ring, then you're absolutely nothing. And so to me, I'm like, I will beat the right, but I will win back these voters, but I will win them back with ideas, with plans, with real policy. And yes, of course, with making our movements and the left welcoming and absolutely doing all of the things that, to be honest, the right doesn't do, because you are absolutely off your shit if you think that the right and left are equally hateful. And that's what I'm hearing from you, that you think that somehow the left and the right, they both hate equally. Both of them want to intern people. Both of them believe that some people don't deserve rights. And I want to play this because this was a very awkward moment.
But Franny,
I'm a stand-up comedian.
Things that are wrong.
No,
Bernie agrees with my positions 100%.
Wait,
so
who?
What you described about Bernie is exactly me. And so that's why I'm like, what Bernie has the same positions as me, the same idea, the same framing. In fact, he's agreed with Elon Musk on cutting the Pentagon in the exact same way that I have. And yet Bernie's an angel and I'm the devil. Like, that's crazy.
No one's saying that you're the devil.
That's crazy.
Bernie actually builds. He's not making the rounds. He's not making the rounds and not pushing back. He's not pushing back.
He published an op-ed in Fox News today. He makes the rounds exactly like I do. Exactly like I do.
Good. No, I think that's important. But honestly, Cenk, file your nails or something, because this was not good. This was not a good look during that conference.
I want to ask you guys something. Do you believe that trans Americans should have the same constitutional rights as all Americans to employment, health care, and housing? Constitutional rights.
Okay, Cenk, I'm a stand-up comic, so I listen to crowds regularly. I know when they are booing, groaning, or in this case, there is a whistle of disapproval, and I know when they are cheering. Now, let's play it again. They're not on board with trans people having the same constitutional rights.
I want to ask you guys something. Do you believe that trans Americans should have the same constitutional rights as all Americans to employment, health care, and housing? Constitutional rights.
Do you want me to translate?
You got like maybe like a sixth of the audience. There's a couple people clapping very, very no. Okay.
So,
and then
Franny, let's break it down.
This is the best. Wait, this is the best part. You got to keep watching, because it's the best that, like, not only you get hung out to dry on this, like, can we all agree, shtick that you're on, and they don't meet you,
God,
and then Charlie meets you with this
constitutional right to housing.
Wait, I love it.
Well, there is no constitutional right to housing.
So then he goes like, wait a minute, not only don't I not agree with you on the trans people, because he never answered it. He's like, actually, your right to housing anyway. And I know that's not even what the Constitution says. It's just equal protection around housing, right? It doesn't say you have a right to housing. I wish it did. But like, it's just amazing to me. Like, do you see? And you look at him and there's a moment you're just kind of like, there's just this moment, and it's just like, what are we doing, Jake? Like, what's going on here?
See, this is a great example. You're being so unbelievably unfair about that interaction. The reason I did that, Franny, and I knew I was taking a big risk.
You were.
Is because I wanted to try to get some of them because I've done it on other right-wing shows and it worked really well. It didn't work really well this time. That's why it was a risk. But I challenged them on how trans people are like every American, and they should have constitutional rights.
Well, let's watch a little bit. Let's watch whether you did it. Let's watch whether you did it. Did you do it or not?
Let me finish, Franny.
Did you do it or not?
Important, and you're totally smearing me on a thing that is crazy.
I'm playing you the clip. I'm not smearing you. I'm literally playing the clip. Cenk, I'm playing the clip.
Will you let me talk? I said I had the courage to challenge them on constitutional rights for trans people. You asked me to have the courage to challenge them. I did, and now you're attacking me for it.
No, I'm not attacking. I'm not attacking you for it. I'm saying you have characterized this.
Look at this. They didn't agree with you.
No. I'm saying
you're trying to get them to agree to constitutional rights. That's exactly what we should do. We should say trans people are just like every American citizens, and they should have constitutional rights. I go and have the courage to challenge that audience to that, and then you want to make fun of it? Like
I'm saying
agree with you. What do you want? Do you want me to challenge them, or do you not want me to challenge them? Make up your mind.
It was a big swing. You agreed that it was a little bit of a miss. And I think,
by the way, you're not exactly right about that either. So I was in the room. 2/3 of them cheered. 1/3 of them clearly did not, and groaned and cheered.
The people who were cheering were not mic'd properly. I understand. Look. It was a swing. It's good you asked, but I didn't think that you really had like a save for that, because I think you were like, you actually gave them credit for the few people that agreed. And meanwhile, Cenk, you have so much disdain for our side. If I say, hey, I believe trans people should play in sports, you have so much disdain. You get so mad. But here you are, and here is what you say.
Constitutional right to housing.
Okay, so I hear you. What I got out of that, guys,
I'm just trying to be the interpreter.
Yeah. No, there was a lot of applause and there was some consternation, right? I'll take it. It's a start. So guys, when we can even disagree about what's constitutional, Second Amendment, housing, etc. But just let's treat everyone as Americans. And I say that to the right and I say it to the left.
For sure.
Okay, so
When's the last time they heard that message? Never.
Thank you for, you don't know. I guess thank you, but you have so much grace for people who really were groaning and not on board with what you said.
When did I say I have grace for that?
I mean, no, you said it right there. You said, "Hey, I'll take it," and it was like, "This is what we got to do."
Two-thirds of the room said, "Yay, trans constitutional rights." When's the last time 2/3 of AmFest cheered for constitutional rights?
Why do you not extend the same grace to so-called radical leftists?
I'm really glad we're back to this, Franny, because this is important. And we mentioned in the beginning, and I wanted to come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, having grace for the left, I run the network, and everybody gets to have their own opinion. Everybody gets to fight me. Everybody gets to state their own opinion without any editorial control. First of all,
you do go ballistic on them like you went ballistic on me earlier.
Yeah,
you do get, and you
you
always say you're wrong.
Yeah,
you want me to do that? I can do it. You're wrong. You're an idiot. You're wrong. We can do it. We know what you do when you disagree. It's not. It's not. I'll take it.
Hold on. This is super important for the audience to know. But so we fight, right? When we disagree, I say you're wrong, you say I'm wrong.
Very rarely.
Is there any consequences afterwards? Do I then threaten your job? Do I take people off the air?
I mean, I barely have a job with y'all, but look, first of all, we rarely ever, back to what I'm saying, Cenk, who's your main co-host?
Anna, on the Young Turks.
When you say
that there's like over 24 Young Turks contributors and hosts.
I know, I understand that.
So, okay, but Franny,
I'm trying to tell you that there is in fact, Cenk, let's just be real. We said this privately. I'll say it publicly now. About a year ago, around the time of the trans stuff, and the trans sports stuff, you said to me, "Hey, Francesca, just so you know," and I don't think it's not a secret, but you didn't tell the audience. But it was like, "Hey, just so you know, like TYT main show is kind of like mainstream progressives. Like that's sort of what we want to be, and we're more mainstream. Just so you know, we're like moderate progressives kind of thing." And I was like, okay. And then I said to you, why don't we have a debate? Like, why don't you bring John and I on? We debate, you and Anna. We could talk about trans issues. We could talk about, crime. We could talk about all the things that always, get under our skirts. Like, we could talk about that stuff. And that was like, you didn't seem that very excited about that.
Franny, that is a crazy standard. So first of all,
no, I'm just being honest. To say, we've never had that space.
Can I answer? Okay.
Are you mad someone's talking too much? Is Cenk Uygur mad someone else is talking too much?
So when do I get animated? When people cut me off. That's what drives me crazy. Okay. So now the thing that you just said that was our private conversation, I literally said at the very beginning of this broadcast. Okay. So I said populist establishment is one spectrum, and we're on the extreme end of populism. Left-right spectrum is different, and we're not on the extreme of the left. I said we're kind of in the middle, not the moderate BS that the mainstream media does, right? Oh, Joe Manchin is moderate. No, he's not. Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell are moderate. No, they're not. They're radical corporatists, okay? They've perverted the word, okay? So, but am I in the center of the left? Yes, I'm in the center of the left, and so is Anna. So, people catch feelings over that, but the polling shows it, elections show it, everything shows we're in the center of the left. And I'm proud to be there. I don't want to be on the far left.
But I
don't block anyone from being on the far left. And we've had thousands of conversations. And the reason why I'm saying your standard is unfair is you're saying you and John were not involved in those debates, but I've had those debates on air, and I'll have more. I don't care. I'm not shy about it at all. Do I look shy about debating or discussing? So if you want to have another one on the Young Turks, me and you at the 5 o'clock hour or whatever it might be, because 3 to 5. So I'm saying Pacific time. Everybody knows Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, we do the show. And that's a news show. So we go through the news items, right? But now sometimes what we're doing is at 5 o'clock, we're having guests on for longer conversations. So if more progressives that are on the just as populist as us or somewhere else on the populist spectrum, but to the left of us on that spectrum want to come on, great. I believe in my opinions 100%. I'm here to defend it. That's why I'm on this show. So, but what gets me animated is when others say, no, Cenk, You are not allowed to have that opinion. I give everybody the space to have their own opinion, and I run the network. But Cenk, even though you run the network, even if you didn't run the network, you're not allowed to have that opinion because that opinion aids and abets racist, sexist, whatever excuse we're using. But you're not allowed to have it. That's an immoral opinion, and you're not. And no,
I
do not agree to that.
I've been an example for the last hour of trying to hear you out on your opinion on all of this, and I feel like I've gotten, when the converse happens and I explain that I think that there's a fine line between being anti-establishment and fascistic. There is a fine line between being populist and pro-authoritarian, that so many throughout history, authoritarians, Mussolini, have been massive populists. They were loved and liked so long as certain groups of people weren't included in that populism. And I think there's a better way to do populism. And so
okay, you tell me, Franny, what's your genius idea for how to win the voters back without ever talking to them?
Well, here's my genius idea. Let's just say, okay, just imagine you had the biggest YouTube channel for, progressive media. Just imagine you had that. And you had a massive failure in the Democratic establishment. Kamala Harris gets her ass handed to her. Biden didn't drop out. And people are scrambling. They're running like, rats off a sinking ship from MSNBC, from Pod Save America, and all these Beltway bros that lied to them about the Democratic Party having this in the bag, knowing what they were doing, that never talked about capitalism, that never talked about corporate donors, that never talked about any of that stuff. And I would love, if I had a network, to be the place where people from the center left or liberals, the wicked liberals, to come over and say, hey, let's think systematically about this. Let's think long-term about this. Let's think about political revolution. Let's think about getting serious about the 99% against the 1%. That's what I would do.
That's exactly what I'm doing. So you're welcome. I explained exactly. Hold on, let me answer.
I don't see you doing that.
Well, you're wrong. Again, you're wrong. So, I explained how Pod Save America and The View and Morning Joe were so full of crap, pretending that they knew all along that Joe Biden had trouble. Then why didn't you say it, you liars? Why did you protect him all along? I ran against Joe Biden. I did a petition against Joe Biden. I said we should do an open primary. My number one motivating factor is to find a populist left figure that wins that 2028 primary. That is the most important thing in the world. And now you've got me scared, Franny, that all of a sudden, like, if the far left peels off and goes and agrees with the establishment and votes with them, I will lose my freaking mind. It will be the greatest betrayal of this movement that I have ever seen. So I am massively against.
I don't think you consider
anyone on the left should be massively against the establishment. So what you're using is fear of the right-wing populism going south on us, which is a real fear, which I'm trying to guard against. To say, like, to now all of a sudden, like, well, maybe the establishment's not so bad. No, the establishment's horrible. It's horrible. I'm not going back in that prison. I'd rather be in the populist woods with real human beings fighting and battling and trying to get to the right answer and the right coalitions than to be in an establishment prison where we're now locked up by Mitch McConnell and goddamn Dick Cheney and Joe Biden and Pelosi, and we're marched back into let it continue the robbery. Thank you, sir, for the robbery. We appreciate your stupid
and the right's not robbing people. The right doesn't rob people.
So no, but look at that, Franny. Look at what you're saying. I just said 200 times in this interview that Trump's a fake populist. And there's going to be a huge
concretely.
robbery.
I don't know who you're talking about. Concretely,
so you think the right's not going to do
it? No. I'm just like that. let me just say how I see it. Just you've explained how you see it. So I've been covering Trump since 2016. We covered his rise. One of the big videos we did in AJ Plus was like, why do people like Trump, right? And everyone was like, oh no, we have to talk about why people like Trump, and it's so obvious. The outsider tells it like it is, very direct,
yes.
Not afraid to upset, the normal establishment order of like, you gotta be a politician, you gotta be this. Of course, there's a million. He's kind of funny. There's a million reasons. Right. And there's a million reasons why people like him. And yet, obviously, there is a massive danger. My brain just made the biggest fart noise on me, and I do not remember exactly what I was saying. But
that's okay. So you'll remember.
No.
Yeah.
You're right. Keep you say something.
Yeah. So Franny, look, it's when I talk about people attacking us, I want to be clear about this because it's really important. Yeah,
Okay, wait. Will you say that really quickly?
Yeah,
I remembered. My analysis has always been Donald Trump is a great brand master as an outsider, but he's a Trojan horse. That at the end of the day, even though Mitch McConnell, says his bullshit and whatever, he, of course he wants all the same things that Donald Trump wants. Trump is a brilliant Trojan horse for, yes, the establishment right. Look at all the neocons he's appointed. I made a joke like, oh, all the cabinet positions are going to be, and yeah, you got a random Kash Patel and whomever, but they're going to be the people commenting on his Truth Social. It's like, nah, he's picking Huckabee. He's picking Marco Rubio. He's got Elise Stefanik. He's all these people who we're going to be at war with Iran within a couple years. I have no doubts about that. So like, I truly, unless again, his actual base is like, no, including us, like, I just feel like, is that not clear? I thought we were all clear that Trump was literally just a Trojan horse for establishment politics. It's as if Bernie Sanders said all the things and all the right things, but when got into office, Nancy Pelosi's behind the curtain pulling the levers. Like, wasn't that just understood that that's who he was?
So no, it's more complicated than that. I agree with everything you said about Trump and why he got to be popular. He ran as anti-establishment,
Right.
as a fake populist, right?
Right.
And so that's what worked really well. Wouldn't it be amazing if we had a real populist on the left and ran on populist left? So I hope to God we all agree to that in the 2028 primaries. So in terms of the part that I don't quite agree on the Trojan horse, you're right. That's all he's done so far. In the first term, he had 4 freaking years. And his number one and almost only accomplishment was corporate tax cuts. Massive, massive corporate tax cuts. And in fact, on the Young Turks, back then I said, watch, the establishment is going to leave him the minute those tax cuts pass. I even named a name. I said Gary Cohn, his national economic advisor. Okay, he's going to leave right after the corporate tax cuts pass, because that was the Trojan horse part. So you're right about that, right? But Trump is uncontrollable. So that's why that's why the Mitch McConnell and the establishment fights against Trump during the primaries. They didn't want him because they want people that can be controlled. Trump is uncontrollable both in terrible ways and maybe potentially ways that could be positive. And that is why the establishment is scared to death of him, is because they're like, well, what if he does things that are populist in the right direction? No, right? Now, he hasn't yet, right? So, and the policy that you just mentioned, Franny, that's the one where the rubber hits the road. And so I am so curious what's going to happen. So Israel has absolute power at this point. And they believe, and they're drunk on power because they believe Trump is going to give them everything that they want. And in the beginning, he definitely will. That's why he nominated Team Miriam, as I explained earlier, Stefanik, Rubio, etc. Right? And so those guys will be our neocons. They will push for us to fund Israel's wars from here to eternity. If I am wrong, then there'll never be any pushback from the right-wing populists, the MAGA base, and they'll be like, oh, send all of our money to Israel, start more wars. Maybe we should fight the wars for Israel. And then I'll come on your show and go on the Young Turks and say, guys, I was wrong. No, it turns out the right-wing populists, they weren't anti-war. They were just cultists, right? Or I'll be right, and some portion of that base will go, no, we're sick of funding Israel's wars. Not that they care about Muslims. I mean, Tucker's a good example of it. He turned on the Iraq war a year into the war, and he explained on a radio show, he's like, because these Iraqi Arab Muslims are monkeys, and I don't care about them. Yeah. So he doesn't do it with good intent or anything positive in his heart, but they genuinely want to get the hell out of wars, right?
Yes.
So if I'm right, when Trump pushes too far on Israel, they're going to push back. I think so. That's a great mystery.
I wanted
to with our own eyes.
Yes, and I want to say, for the record, I'm not against. Here's what I'm not against: bringing those people into the fold of a broad progressive coalition that includes everyone. So and does. However, if those folks are also like, yeah, because there's already too many Muslims here, right, guys? That's something that I have a line around, but that's not to say, especially if it's some random uninformed voter who's just like racist by, just sort of not genetically, but like their dad was a racist, so they are a little bit, whatever. Like those
Cultural,
people,
yeah.
those culturally, those people can be worked on. I do think for me, this is what a broad coalition looks like, but there
Yes.
are lines, and that line for me is respecting human rights and civil rights of your fellow Americans, which I think you're trying to get to. But I do want to ask, we all hate Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough, but like in practice, is what you're doing that different from, like, if you were to get invited to Mar-a-Lago, Cenk, wouldn't you go?
Oh, I would definitely go. And so, okay, so
To
let's
open lines of discussion.
yeah, so good question. So let me address it. So Mika and Joe were very clear. They said we went down there because we're scared and they wanted to court power and get access again. So to me, what is that about? That's about their ego, that's about their career, that's about their money, etc. For me, why would I go to Mar-a-Lago? Well, I'm not going to ask for any money. I never do. I don't. That's not what I do. And I don't care about their positions. I don't want to be in the Trump administration. I don't care about any of that. What do I care about? I care about policy. So I believe that if I'm in a room with Trump, I can convince him on at least one policy. Okay. And I know no one believes that, but just put me in a room with him. Okay. And I'm not going to walk out of and if he says no to the policy, right, then I'm gone. And I gave it my best shot and it didn't work. Okay. But at least I tried. At least I tried really hard to move that ship in the right direction. Remember, Trump likes to be popular. So that is a place where you could show him, hey, look at these populist positions, economically populist positions, which are overwhelmingly popular. Do that. So a good example is cut the Pentagon instead of cutting Medicare. Right.
And
so
what do you
now,
think the probability? I wanted to ask you a question. What do you think under Doge? What is the probability that the Pentagon is cut versus what every single Republican ultimately wants? And that's why this guy is their Trojan horse, cutting Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Like, what's the probability they actually cut the Pentagon instead? I'm giving it a 4% chance on Polymarket.
We should do a bet on there.
Let's do a bet.
So no, I've got it at 20%. So not very high, but higher than what you got it at. 20% that they cut the Pentagon. So 80% that they won't. But now there's a fighter's chance that they do.
In
what is
comparison,
the chance that they
like they
cut
rather.
Medicare? Hold on. What is the chance that they try to cut Medicare or Social Security? 60%. So that's still much more likely, right?
Yes.
And I've started to see And by the way, here's another reason to communicate. I now am seeing right-wing hosts talking about cutting Social Security. So they're coming for Social Security.
What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do it.